Welcome to Trust the Journey. I'm Jason Maletsky.
And I'm Melanie Curtis.
Our mission is to live, love, laugh, and learn together with you.
We're here to create conscious connections to grow and contribute through our practice of openness, honesty, vulnerability, humility, and trust. Trusting the entire journey.
If you'd like to find us on the wider internet, our website is trustthejourney.today, and it's also all of our social media.
Yeah, right on, family. Thank you so much for being with us. As always, here we go.
Awesome. So, welcome. Today in this episode, I'm very excited because I'm going to be interviewing Melanie for the first time about her experiences studying and living abroad for a year that she spent in Australia as a junior in college, and diving into the impact that experience had on her life.
Yeah, I like this idea of interviews because it's like doing deep dives on experiences and extracting insights. Pretty cool stuff. I loved our episode with the Appalachian Trail with you. So if people haven't heard that, I invite you to listen to it.
Me too. I thought that was a really powerful way for us to explore a lot of the life lessons that we've brought, that we bring to the table, that we've put our time and energy into growing into ourselves and sharing. That storytelling is really such an inspired thing. Yeah. So I'm really excited today.
Yeah.
So my first question is, tell me about you before you decided to travel abroad. Where were you in life? What was going on? Give me the prelude, the preamble to like what led up to the idea of traveling and leaving home to go study somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a great question. I was in college, so I went to Middlebury College. I was on the pretty typical trajectory in life, to be truthful. I was in the rock out high school, be in every club, get straight A's, all the sports and all of that. I was the quintessential overachiever, sort of going down the typical path. Like after high school, you go to college. And Middlebury, it's interesting because even choosing Middlebury, I chose it. I didn't even really like it when I visited it. And that's relevant because I ended up getting the most financial aid from Middlebury. And that was part of my choice to go there, but also it was because it was furthest away from home. There was like some part of me in my even young, unclear, unconscious mind that sort of wanted to experience life separate from what I was used to. And so anyway, I was in college and it was my junior year studying abroad. So a lot of different colleges offer that experience where you can spend an entire year of your college experience, going somewhere else and having a basically cultural experience inside of your education. I had originally planned only to go for a semester, but as the story evolves, I ended up spending a whole year there.
So what's Middlebury? Where's Middlebury?
It's in Vermont. So I went to college in Vermont. It's a 4-year liberal arts college that, was awesome. I'm very grateful I went there. It's, some of the best friends of my life and best beautiful connections in my life I have from that time.
Okay. And so where did you decide to travel to, and what were the main factors? Like, what did you toss around? What were your options? What led you down your path?
Yeah, what's funny about Middlebury is that Middlebury has like this amazing language program. And I don't have regrets per se. And I always laugh about that because I had already started skydiving. So I had done my first jump at my dad's house, and I was my brain was already flipped. Like I was already like all about skydiving. It's the only thing I could think of. I was wildly like super into it, and yet was still pursuing the path of getting a college degree and going that direction. So when I was considering where to study abroad, it really wasn't a doubt. I was going to do it no matter what. I wanted to have that experience. But I really wanted to continue my skydiving training, you know? So when I first started jumping, I was able to jump at my dad's house basically for free, but I didn't live there. You know, my parents were divorced, so I only visited my dad. And so when I visited, I could jump, but it was very slow going. Like my first 4 years of skydiving, I did probably like 12 jumps. You know, like it was just not enough for me. So instead of choosing a language path, I literally designed my study abroad experience around how I could go skydiving. And so I found the nicest weather. I found an English speaking nation. I reached out to the drop zones ahead of time and asked how I could start. I had this many static line jumps and this and that and the other, and basically set it up before I even went that I would be starting on AFF level 5. And for non skydivers listening, that means sort of starting in the middle of an accelerated free fall progression to learn how to be a licensed skydiver. And so I had started on static line, which is a lot of what you see in the military, but with square parachutes. So yeah, I designed it all around skydiving, and then yeah.
So you basically did one of the things that's it's a similar thing that exists where I started to skydive. Where I grew up is in Ontario in Canada. Mm-hmm. And there's a program in Canada called OSAP.
Okay.
OSAP. It's the Ontario Student Assistant Program. So they basically fund your education through grants and through loans. And oftentimes the S in student gets replaced with skydiver. So it's the Ontario Skydiver Assistance Program, where people started off thinking they were going to college and ended up spending all their grant money or all their loan money on a skydiving, adventure.
So true. I mean, well, yeah. I mean, there's certainly more to that, my story, but it was very purely driven. I joke about this a lot. Like my entire adult life has been highly influenced by my love of skydiving and my efforts to engage in the sport in all the ways that I have. And I'm really glad. Like, for example, so I get to Australia. I'm there now as this student. And what's funny is that, I mean, the culture of Australia aside is sort of this really drinking and partying culture, which in skydiving, as a young skydiver, that's sort of part of skydiving as well, where you're like partying and drinking after hours and just having this like free community experience amidst your efforts to learn to do this thing that you love during the day. So anyway, I bring that up because I'm a student. I'm in a foreign country. I have no money. So I'm like, I want to go skydiving, but how am I going to actually do that? Like, I literally bought a bicycle. I got a job working at a diet food place where I packed food like in bags for this business to make money so that I could pay for my skydives. And I'm not joking. This is like, I was wildly intense about it. I mean, luckily the education part of it was pass fail, because I really spent so much of my time and energy on my skydiving efforts. I would get up at 5 a.m, ride 45 minutes to this diet place, pack a bunch of food. They wouldn't include bread crusts in the bags for the customers. So I would take all the bread crusts home, eat them. They were part of my like survival, because I didn't want to spend any extra money on anything except jumps. And just crazy.
You had your priorities in order.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So why skydiving? That was a question that I had written down right away when I was like, why skydiving?
Oh my God, right? That is such an amazing question that so much of my life experience is built on to this day. The way I like to talk about my first jump story, and it's really relevant for me to my very first skydive. So I didn't know it at the time, but as an 18-year-old person who was afraid of this thing, like because my dad owned a drop zone, I could have jumped when I was like 16. I could have done it sooner, but I was just too scared. I was not ready. I just couldn't and did not want to do it. And then one day I said, tomorrow I'm doing it. And I did. What is interesting is that experience of overcoming fear, which sounds very sort of not inspiring to me. Like, oh, I just overcame a fear. But really, only in reflection years later on that experience where I'm like, there's no way I can jump out of this perfectly good airplane, as it were. And it's not what I think people forget or don't include on the end of that sentence is there's no way I can jump out of this airplane and live. Like it to me it was like death, and I think we've mentioned this before, but this is very real. And so it's like when I landed and I lived and I was not dead, no joke. It was like holy shit, everything my brain tells me I cannot do, I have to question, I might be able to do it. And no joke. So think about that. Like as an 18-year-old person who doesn't quite understand that, but gets access to true like questioning of fear such that you can do more things and employ more courage and say yes to more experiences and go for it because you are informed from this experience. Like that's very powerful and shows up everywhere in my life, entrepreneurship, like so much of my life is informed by that.
I have to echo your sentiment so accurately, so poignantly that this experience I had was exactly the same in that and I did not believe in the parachute functionality and that this would work, even though you watch people do it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to work for me. It's not going to work for me. For me, it's going to fail and I'm going to die.
It's so amazing.
Yeah,
so intense.
and it doesn't.
It's true.
Right? Yeah.
Go on. Yeah, please.
No, I just it sounds like we have the exact same kind of landmark experience that's really like a pivotal fulcrum for the life experience as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things that that we both share as one of the reasons why we like to engage people in our lives in a way to put fear forward and say, here, look at this, analyze it, explore
Yes.
it, experience it, right? Get to know it and then learn to overcome it.
Yeah. I mean, in most of the enlivening experiences, not just skydiving, but if I think about every time I've like really stepped through the fire of fear, as it were. You know what I mean? Like those are the most enlivening, elevating experiences of my life. Even if they experience or they bring pain, you know what I mean? Even if it's not an instantaneous, oh, I'm through fear and yay, I'm so awesome because I got through that so quickly. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying like, even if it's a longer term healing of fear or moving through fear, it takes time and there's pain involved in that. Those are by far the most elevating, moving, inspiring experiences of my life. So I stand for that if people in the world want that experience of enlivening and want that experience of living beyond what they currently think is possible. You know what I mean? Like, I really believe we are always so much more capable than we ever currently think, right? Like, and that is another thing that skydiving and again, moving across the world, that experience of living away from my family on the other side of the earth, totally by myself, having to make friends, like that is such a huge experience. And I've had more than one of those sort of big choice move experiences in my life, but reflecting on Australia and being willing to go there as a young person it informed me of, again, more possibility, more of what's available. It opened my young mind in a really powerful way, connecting to a different culture, so many friends over there. Like, there's just so much available in the big experience that we choose into and then see through.
Awesome. So let's time travel, okay? So take us back in time, the place, the date, the setting, the scene, your emotional state, your experience, right? Put us through Melanie's eyes on your first day walking onto the drop zone in Australia. You have 5 jumps at the time?
I had like 12 jumps or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's a good question. I don't even know if I remember the exact day walking on the drop zone. What I will say is that because I planned it all and I needed to get a ride, I had communicated with the like people who jumped there. And so one of my instructors, his name is Larry. I hope he listens to this at some point. He's such a cool dude. But basically, I lived near the university and I would go and I would stand on the side of the road at the roundabout waiting for Larry to drive by and pick me up and go to the drop zone. So effectively, my first time going to the drop zone, I'm standing on the side of the road, getting picked up by this random person that I don't know, which sounds totally dangerous now, but it was communicated. He was clearly a person who was an instructor at the drop zone, so it didn't feel unsafe. It was more like I'm doing it, you know what I mean? So I was definitely nervous, no question about it. I'm meeting this new person, I'm doing this thing I fucking wildly care about, really want to do, and then I'm going to actually do my first ever free fall jump, which was very scary. So I guess it's not my first ever free fall jump, but my first ever free fall jump, like going to terminal velocity.
Yeah.
And like that's a thing. So everyone was really nice, like it was a small place. It was this random room at some random backwoods Australian drop zone. It was not a big place, and so the people were nice and I was nervous, and that's pretty much that story for sure.
Which part of the country was it in?
Yeah,
And what year was it?
it was 1998. So
Okay.
1998, and I ended up, yeah, so that's when I was there, and it was in a town called Ayr, Ayr, which is about an hour plus south of Townsville, Australia, in North Queensland. So I went to James Cook University in North Queensland because I chose it for the weather. Literally.
Uh,
Literally.
Gotcha. Cool. So, um, I'm gonna ask the who question. Who really stood out to you? Who really carried you to be like your first good connection, the person that you bonded with?
Well, I mean, Larry was one of them because he was one of my very first instructors. And he was always very kind and very supportive. He's this older man and just like a, kind, supportive instructor, someone who clearly was joyful to be in that role of skydiving instructor. I also met Richard Pym, who was the owner of the drop zone. And he was just sort of this wild personality and, has lots of energy. And so I was a little bit nervous around him. He felt very cool to me at the time. So I wasn't like just necessarily bonding with him until later when I felt more at ease as a person in that environment that I was a newbie, total newbie in. My friend Deb, she was nice. She was like another woman on the drop zone, which was cool. So she kind of took me under her wing, as it were, and we ended up going to like a boogie together, my first boogie, which is a skydiving event at another place and a just special event being hosted. But she was cool. I mean, there were a lot of cool people. Muttley, I bring him up a lot. He was one of the funniest people on the drop zone. I also felt like nervous because I thought he was very cool. I was like, he's funny, he's cool. I'm nervous. I'm a total dork newbie, but he was also very nice to me and included me in the fun, cool jokes, which was very nice.
Is there a relationship between people that you admire when you think somebody's cool per se,
Yeah.
put the quotes around the cool and say if they're cool, if you think that they embody something that you like or that you idolize or that you would like to be, then there's this relationship where you place them above you on a hierarchy and you look up at them to be like, oh man, I'd like to be cool someday,
Exactly. Oh, that shows
right?
up so much in my young life. It's amazing how that happens. And that's actually one of the reasons why, as a leader in the sport of skydiving or just at large in general, if ever I feel that, I really aim to be accessible as much as possible, in terms of I want people to really feel like the possibility for themselves inside whatever it is that I'm doing. I never want to project myself as perfect or anything like that, but rather, human. That's why I really work hard to write about my struggles and share about the things that I'm working through and stuff like that.
So, have you, before this, were you very well traveled? Had you been away from the USA before?
No, I think Canada. Well, I'm in Canada because I lived really close to Canada. I'm Canadian. We're kind of country people.
You grew up in Vermont, right?
Well, I was from upstate New York, but 30 minutes from the Canadian border. So like as
Yeah,
kids,
okay.
we would boat in the Canadian waters and stuff like that. But otherwise, no.
Yeah. So, what what kind of culture shock did you experience? What were the big things that really like surprised you, unexpected, or like what expectations did you have and were true or were different?
Yeah.
You know?
It's a funny thing because I was immersed with Americans and Australians. They sort of had us, but there were a lot of Americans there when I was first there because I was on a study abroad program. So it felt a little bit like I had to make an effort to experience the Australian culture without a high level of American influence, if that makes sense. So, not that that's bad. There were great people that I met that were Americans that were a part of the program, one of which is one of my best friends to this day. But it's notable. I ended up making some Australian friends, which was cool. And then as a result of that, I ended up staying the rest of the year and ended up living in a house with them, like off campus. And so that really helped me really experience the culture more. And I say the culture, and I mean, it's true, just living around people who are from that country made a big difference. But culturally, it was a lot of drinking, it was a lot of like sculling beers and stuff like that, which I'm glad to have experienced and also glad that I don't do that anymore. But yeah, I mean, even the people that I was friends with and lived with back then are truly some of my best friends to this day. And I think part of it is because we made the effort to have a more shared life experience together by living together, getting a house, and like doing all that together, even though I was gone every weekend skydiving. Literally, I was gone every weekend skydiving. I like literally never hung out with my friends on the weekend, but I saw them every week throughout our uni experience.
I can absolutely relate to that. I had a similar type of house full of roommates as a young person and very much initially spent time with them. And then when I found skydiving, all of a sudden it was like, yeah, I'm kind of out. See ya. Bye. No,
I count
been nice.
myself, I'm proud of myself that I still have non skydiving friends. And I also am proud of myself that I have made new non skydiving friends in my more recent life.
I can echo that statement as well.
So funny. But I mean, I also acknowledge the full immersion, like that's something I look back and I go, that is kind of cool. Like, I really do reflect on sitting on the side of a roundabout, eating fucking bread crusts, buying spaghetti in a can and eating nothing else but that so I could afford to go and jump, doing one jump because it's all I could afford, but I was psyched to do that one jump. Like that full immersion, passionate, powerful experience is so awesome. Like I'm so happy I had that experience. And it's I really feel like this is a part of the courage piece, right? Because I easily could have not done any of that. I could have not done any of that. You know what I mean? And because I did, I had an illuminating, supportive, passionate, passion filled life experience that then elevated the rest of my life. Whether it elevates the rest of your life or not doesn't necessarily matter. It just happened to be that way with me. I just, I look back and I'm so grateful that I did it, that I had the courage to go against my parents' wishes and hide my emails to the AFF, instructor people. Like there was a lot that I did to make it happen that easily could have stopped me. And I really am proud of myself as an older person looking back on that young person. And even now today, when I feel like I'm going to be held back by a fear or something like that, I encourage myself and I support myself really emotionally by going, this is really a good, powerful, positive thing that you can do for yourself and others.
So, what did you come back with? What was your big takeaways? Like, were you inspired to do anything different upon your return? Did you come back as, a new person in some way? What was your big
Yeah,
takeaway from the trip?
I came back with a freaking accent. I sounded weird. I completely just mirror neuroned it up and I really did. I had a pretty strong, I wasn't like I sounded like I was Australian, but I definitely had picked it up. I also,
Yeah.
interestingly, had lost a ton of weight and I was at the like skinniest I had ever been in my
Because
life
you were eating bread crust, Melanie.
because of the bread crust and because of all the
Because
bike
you're,
riding, because I had no
yeah.
car and I was like, I had a no car and I had goals. And so, yeah, I came back very thin, which was, I mean, no, this sort of not, but it's part of it because, like, at that point in my life as a person, I always sort of had this experience of my body as being sort of slightly overweight. And in college, the freshman 15 and then the sophomore, whatever, I definitely had gained weight. And so I left to go to Australia being pretty overweight. I weighed like 175 pounds. Like that was a lot for me. And so to come back and to have had the experience of exercising more and eating not necessarily well, but having an experience of my body that was noted. And that shows up later in my life as I started to become a competitive skydiver. But I also came back with this like, America sucks. You know what I mean? Like I totally was the young
Bias.
person. Yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
America sucks. Australia's awesome. Americans are stupid. Like I totally was in like resistance to being with all these idiot Americans because I was somehow cooler now because I
Yeah.
had this Australian experience. And so I acknowledge that that is what I was like. I shed that pretty quickly because my senior year at Middlebury was also really great. And there are cool people in America. But I just have to laugh because I was so that girl. I was so like, I pendulumed all the way to Australia is the best thing in my life. It's the most amazing thing that ever happened. That type of pendulum emotional experience that we have when we have a breakthrough experience, right? So, yeah, Australia changed my life. And I see this a lot with people doing personal growth stuff. They'll do some avenue where they experience a breakthrough and then they will associate the feelings and the breakthrough with that one thing, which is really just not the case in my experience. Is like there are loads of ways to have a breakthrough, and in this instance in my young life, it was because I went to Australia and lived abroad and all of the things that I've been sharing. But I I always like to highlight that because I see that a lot where people go nuts over one idea and think it's the answer for everyone. And I invite them to really consider there are tons of different options for growth and breakthrough.
You very much have me thinking about how often people grab onto the idea of a particular religion with that same kind of religious
Yes,
attitude
totally.
towards it. And the word very much kind of describes that entire ethos of how we, revere a certain ideal
Totally.
about one singular experience when in life is truly the entirety of
Yep.
experience. Yeah.
It's amazing what ideology, the power of ideology, whether it's the ideology, quote unquote, of Australia is the best place, America sucks. You know what I mean? Which again, I
Yeah.
don't believe that, but I'm more echoing that young mind experience. But yeah, that idea at the time was very powerful for me. You know what I mean? And I'm glad and grateful to have grown through that and that type of limiting view. But yeah, it's like this idea. I forget how people say this, but it's something like be careful what you declare. I think I might have mentioned this before, but like, be careful what you declare. Like, this is certainty. Like, whenever we sort of,
Yeah.
this is certain. I've had so many experiences in my own trajectory of growth and my own humanity where I am humbled so frequently by these declarations of certainty. You know what I mean?
I was just watching your body language along with that statement, and you kind of used this emblematic representation of like placing a spear into the ground, of like, placing a flag
Yep.
kind of thing, of like, this is ours,
Right.
right? I mark this land for the king or for the queen or for whatever nation,
Yeah.
and it's kind of a ridiculous statement because it's all one big earth, it's all one big life, and we're all gonna die, and it's all gonna change,
Right.
and everything's gonna be different at some point.
Yeah.
And I think as we're young, we really find it easy to attach ourselves to that ideology of a known, a fact. This is truth. I hereby declare the truth,
Yes.
right? And when we find a truth that we can hold on to, that resonates with us, that we understand, we declare it to be the one and only whole truth above all others,
Yep.
right? And then if we carry on through life and continue to be open, and here we'll suddenly find, well, here's a new truth, and it may or may not ring true with the previous truth,
Exactly. Certainty is
right?
very seductive.
Ooh, that's a great phrase. Can I write
You
that down?
can write that down. It's like the sirens in a way.
I
Luring
love
us
that.
in.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what was one of your most memorable experiences on the trip? Tell me something that really stands out to you. What are your fondest memories?
One of my fondest memories is going to my friend Callum's farm for his birthday. It was right before I was leaving to go home after being there a year and really having and making these beautiful friendships. And I was so sad. Oh, I was sad. I didn't want to go. Like, the love of like really loving your people. And these are the friends that I'm still friends with to this day. Like, we are still very close. We talk regularly. And it was this beautiful experience of getting to, meet his family and shared laughs and beers and just be in the bush, ride horses. And, I mean, no joke, we slaughtered a cow in the field. Like, and that sounds terrible, but I grew up around that my dad owns a slaughterhouse, so I'm used to that type of experience. But we did that in the field, and we, just enjoyed the land and wore flannel, like it was it was like, this
Awesome.
wonderful, real and true, rich family experience that, and when it was time to go, I was so sad. And I bring this, and I say it's like a best memory. It sounds like it's not, but that was love. Like there was so much love in my heart. And I was just like going now from that experience of this experience transformed my life. And I made these beautiful friendships that I never could have expected. I had an experience so much more rich than I ever could have fathomed. And I'm now going back and or forward into a new unknown. It's like that, also that wanting it to stay the same, really wanting it not to change, and really being, in a lot of ways, just being attached to my people and not wanting to separate from them. So there was all of this stuff sort of wrapped up in that experience. And I just remember driving away. There's a picture of me in my album somewhere where my friend took a picture of me in the car as we were leaving, and I was crying, and it was just like,
Oh,
but peaceful, like you can see it in my face in that photo where there's tears running down my face and I'm so sad, and there's sort of this like peaceful knowing of love and connection.
fantastic. It sounds to me like what you're really expressing there was connection. That and it's such uh, a theme that I'm really picking up in the world, in my own experience, and in this time that we're all striving to have deeper connections, to share that real bonding with each other, and to be feeling comfortable to be in ourselves and to just be, whatever version of ourselves we want to be, but to truly be connected in a way where it eases that um, kind of isolation
Yeah.
that we experience as the self, as the individual, and when we find connection, when we find others that we can truly bond with, that individuality, although it still exists, it's a collective individuality. We're all a bunch of individuals in this together,
Yeah.
and that connection puts us on a different frequency where on our own we may have some kind of there's some kind of an anxiousness,
Yeah.
some kind of an edge to it, and when we connect it nulls that edge down, and we get more of a harmony together.
Yeah. And it wasn't all great either. Like one of the other experiences that I think is worth mentioning is, and this is like the tougher stuff where, you meet people and you think you're close and you think you're friends and you
Hmm.
trust them and your youth has you connect with them. And anyway, there was this one girl who basically just was a liar. It was not awesome. And she was very, very mean to my friend Karen, who I love deeply. And it became clear to me toward the end of our time there that she was this very toxic person. Like I didn't realize it at the time. We had lots of fun memories. We had a lot of really fun times. We had tons of laughs. She was always sort of the life of the party. And I don't say any of this in judgment about this person, but at the end, when there was clearly sort of an aggression toward my friend, I stood up for her. And it's not
Good for
something
you.
that's easy for me to do, to be in conflict. Like, even now, I really don't do, I do okay with it, but I don't like it. It's not pleasant to be in a conflict where you're standing up and really in dissonance with another person. But this particular experience, I basically was like, no, you are not allowed to be here and you're not allowed to say these things, and you're not welcome here. Like, you need to leave. Like, basically, like, really setting a strong boundary in defense and protection of my friend and myself and just the other people, which sounds so harsh and horrible, and it's not even fun to relive talking about it. But I'm grateful for that experience because it felt like a true stand for good people and a true boundary against things that are really and truly toxic and negative.
Awesome. And so when I say awesome, what I really mean is congratulations for standing up
Thank you.
and for recognizing when there's something that is not okay and for voicing that. And that's a really difficult thing to do. It's so much easier to just be silent
Mm-hmm.
and to just allow inequality to exist in the way that it does in the world, so many ways and so many cases. And it's much harder for us to take on that role and to embrace the conflict by, putting our values forward and holding them strongly up and saying, no, these are my values, these are what are going to be adhered to in this circumstance, and I will not allow your ideas to overcome my values.
Yeah.
And this is a great lesson for, and I found myself in an experience last year where it was a very confrontational experience, and I get really
Me
scared, man. And
too.
my heart's
Me
fluttering. I
too.
feel all kinds of anxious, and body's it's very
Me
unsettling.
too.
And again, much like yourself, I avoid conflict. I do not embrace conflict scenarios because I don't like that feeling either.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you said, don't like it. Doesn't feel nice. But in the end, the result is that when we stand up to that fear, right, we overcome the fear and we're able to adjust our circumstance, our living situation, the circumstance that we find ourselves in the time to be generally always improved,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me too, and I've seen this much, much throughout my whole life, is this wanting wanting to believe everyone is good, which there is a part of me that really does believe that deep down, and that sometimes there's things that are on top of other people, and whatever traumas they've experienced and how those things manifest. So it's I always really wanted just, and it was truly an avoidance thing of conflict, where, like, believing that, oh, it's not love. You have to allow people close to you. Otherwise, you're not being a loving person. I always had that, like, disconnect in my mind. And so working that out, like, this one particular experience is an example of where I started to overcome that. But it's been a long road for me to work through that, truly, to really understand that you having boundaries and standards and stuff like that for yourself, and really living in alignment with your values and saying no to people who do not align or do something that feels hurtful or toxic, that's also love. Like, that separating from those people, giving people an experience of you, and that maybe is the loss of you, is actually the highest form of love given their choices and actions. You know what I mean? So that's helped me a lot. Um, the other thing I want to say about that particular conflict experience in Australia is that it was not clear to me at the time, but the other part of that stands out is the strength that at least for me, the strength that I was able to step into, knowing that I had good people in my corner, knowing I had a real and true support team. Like,
Yeah.
I knew my friends had my back. I knew that we were clear, and it wasn't, it was a positive sort of, we're in this together, we love each other thing.
So I'd like to carry on that theme a little bit and kind of take it forward. And I would like to know a couple things. One is how much jumping did you actually do when you were there? So how much did you overcome that obstacle of fear within yourself and embracing that idea, as well as what empowerment did you bring back as a young person? How did you feel that you had grown? What elements did you overcome?
Yeah, I ended up coming back with like 110 jumps.
What?
Yeah, I was
Awesome.
like, go me. And it was, I mean, because I didn't own my own gear. Like I said, I was working the job to pay and I did the gear rental and the whole thing. And I never, ever asked for a break on that. I just was like, I'm going to make it happen. And what was cool is that over time, as this newbie person, and I've said this before about my positivity and enthusiasm as a young jumper, even in the States, growing in the sport of skydiving, how I was sort of dissed for being the newbie, the enthusiastic newbie, super positive, right? And how the irony, of course, that my career is now built truly on those things, which are very authentic and real for me. So that held true in my Australian experience. Like my passion and fucking psyched up like enthusiasm was present. I was that newbie. And so over time, over the year, meeting like making friends with my Australian skydiving friends and, Richard and the whole drop zone is that at the end he ended up letting me like just use the gear and not rent it anymore. So I got to do more skydives toward the end because I basically had earned my place in sort of the little family. I was clearly committed. I was clearly who I was, and they really supported that and honored that toward the end, which was really awesome as well. Um,
So they brought you in under the wing, right?
yeah,
That's when you're like
yeah.
part of the family. Like now you don't have to pay anymore. We believe you.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
committed.
like
Yeah.
you did good, girl. Like all of that. So coming back, how did I grow? Oh gosh. I mean, again, I feel like the lessons from this experience took time to really sink in. You know what I mean? And sometimes I think that's totally I do think that's totally normal and I think it's totally okay. I definitely, like I said, I came back in a bit of resistance because I loved it so much, but with a little bit of distance from that, I it really just allowed me to think bigger, to think bigger, to really step into courage and believe in possibility, which sounds super cheesy, but like even as a you know me as a very social person, right? So to be accepted and cool and in the group by the end of that experience, like that's a big deal for me, someone who cares about human connection and gets so much support from that it socially supported me. So going back into my senior year of college, where I was much more nervous as a freshman and sophomore at Middlebury, I came back and I was much more chill at the, parties and stuff. And I was much more chill walking around the campus. Like I felt a social ease come over me because I sort of earned the experience of working through social nervousness down there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. That's a self-confidence piece that really takes some time, and I think that many of us can relate to the idea that exposing ourselves to unfamiliar environments and circumstances really benefit us in the longer term with regard to building a skill set that's going to allow us to learn to be confident with ourselves and in whatever the circumstance we find ourselves in.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say, which I think is also very relevant, is that because of because I had this thing that I fucking loved, crazy loved, aka in this part of my life, skydiving. I feel like that love had such a supportive role in my life that I didn't need as much from other people. Like I was able to feel, it sounds weird, but I was able to feel safer in the world and in my growth of as a person and just life experience in general because I had this thing that was really solid for me, you know? Like
Gotcha.
maybe
Yeah,
not
yeah.
that I was good, I wasn't like great at skydiving yet, but it was the love and the connection to that thing that I really felt passionate around. That was a big deal for me.
It's an so I just kind of pulling on that a little bit. I feel like the activity of having some kind of a place to go in our mind where we can engage our true self, where we truly focus ourselves. And now that could be a musical instrument, it could be a bicycle, it could be absolutely anything at all. It could be being with animals, it could be any time where we truly find ourselves in our happy place where when engaged in that activity we kind of forget about everything else
Yes,
that exists,
correct.
right? And
Yes.
that's flow,
It's totally such
right?
a huge antidote to anxiety and to fear. And that's why, like, when I talk about and I invite people who are listening on the podcast to lean into a curiosity, right? So it doesn't have to be some big, giant thing. It could be just a curiosity that then builds over time. Some people find flow very much in a physical activity. Like I tend to really need a physical activity to give my brain a break, which is good. I like that. I like using my brain. I feel like I can find flow using my brain as well, like as a writer or creating videos or whatever, being in conversation with other people. But I've found that to be really, really healthy for me to have outlets for my brain to be fully focused. So skydiving just happened to be one of those things. And it happened to be one of those things that also embodied a fire and passion and freedom in true like manifestation. Like for me, that matters. The value of freedom in my life is very strong. Not everybody values freedom the way that I do. Not everybody values community to the level that I do. You know what I mean? So it depends on what people value. So I echo what you're saying is that it does not have to be jumping out of an airplane. It can be anything. But I am definitely highlight how much it has helped me ease my fear, ease my anxiety, and make me feel safe in my own simple, singular self in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you have to say to people who have also not traveled yet, right? As that young person stepping out into the world and especially going to the other side of the planet, the southern hemisphere, complete disconnect away from everything that's known and familiar except for the language,
Yes.
you know, what encouragement or advice or what would you share with any of our listeners that have thought about these ideas for themselves?
The first thing I would say is to definitely do it. Like, I really believe that so much is found, so much power and enlightenment and expansion of self and life experience is found only beyond where we think we want to go. Like again, it sounds very cheesy, but like that whole comfort zone, like if we really and truly can act beyond our comfort zone, we are delivered gifts and insights and value that we can find literally nowhere else. The balancing thought to that is I would say I am never a person who stands for being reckless. I'm not just saying, fuck it, just go for it. Although, if you have the skills and experience at some point down the line, maybe with travel, then yeah, totally do that. It's more like set yourself up so that you don't feel so nervous that you're not going into a foreign country with no knowledge of the culture, no knowledge of the customs. Like that stuff matters. So, like, learn and make some kind of a plan and also leave enough openness and bring an open mindedness and a desire to have an experience into your own unknown so that you can grow and really learn that the unknown is where we find all of these amazing things versus something we need to be afraid of or we need to avoid.
So one of my favorite things to do, and I'm very well traveled, you know, I've been much around the world many times, and I always say yes when I'm offered a food I've not tried before, in the effort to give myself that opportunity to step outside my comfort zone and try something I'm not sure what it is or if I'm gonna like it or any of that. And the great thing is, you know, sometimes you find your new favorite something.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, this
Yeah.
is amazing. You know, other times maybe not,
Oh,
but sometimes you do.
no crickets on a stick. Yeah. Gross.
Yeah. The crickets are pretty good.
Gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Just
mean,
not
honestly,
alive.
just
Not
to
alive.
to round it off, I mean, I'm happy to answer any final questions that you have. Obviously, the final thought that I would share is that only in the long term reflection of this do I see its true and powerful positive impact on my life. And so it's so easy to stick into the short term in our brains, right? And so, similarly with going skydiving, jumping out of a plane, right? I had no idea the positive impact that that would have on my psyche and thus all of my decision making as a result after that point. You know what I mean? So, again, doesn't mean jumping out of an airplane, but similarly, going across the earth and surviving that experience and learning I have confidence and capability on my own away from my family or the safety of my hometown or whatever it is, like that has allowed me and has informed me and has inspired me so much more than I ever could have imagined at the time. And so that's why I say do these things, right? Like the whole like live your life thing that I stand for, it's real because of the power of the magnification of that and the inspiration in that both for ourselves and others over time.
I I can't echo that enough. And I heard a quote from a friend just recently, and it says, "Start, just do it now. Do it.
Yep.
Whatever it is that you're chewing on, that you think might be something you might want to try, or that's lingering in your mind, just pull the trigger
Yeah.
and go for it.
Why
You know?
not? Why not?
Yeah. What have you got to lose?
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So, do you have any final things? Anybody you'd like to shout out to, or any thank yous,
Oh
or
God. Yes. I mean, I can't not shout out my mom and my parents for their support, you know, as a young person. Even my mom, when I was going averse to the things that she wanted me to do, she was never not in my corner. You know, like even when she didn't want me to be skydiving and it was she's always been my number one fan. I could totally cry, so I'm not going to go too much longer. Mom, I love you. I hope you're listening. I'm sorry that
awesome,
I didn't tell you more things.
awesome. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it on that beautiful sentiment. And thank you, Mom.
Yeah.
You're such a huge support because Melanie is awesome, and that's a lot of your work.
She's the
I
best.
want to carry us into our little "What are we doing" experiment. What are the things we've been trying on? Do we want to update on any things we've been doing? Are we still doing them? Do we have any things we're, you know?
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead and go
Yeah, go
first.
for it.
And so a few weeks back, I shared that I've been doing yoga every day, and I swung the pendulum a little hard. and it started to bite me a bit, and I started to feel quite a bit of pain
Oh.
because of it. So I've had to ease off a little bit and be a little more balanced and have a better mixture of my activity.
Mm-hmm.
So although I am still doing yoga very regularly, like 3 to 5 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
not 7 days a week kind of thing, and I've intermixed a better balance of cardio and workouts and stuff to kind of break it up, because it was biting me a little bit to be my gung-ho attitude of like, oh, sure, I'm just going to do this all the time. So just to kind of bring back to one of our previous episodes with the pendulum swing, and there's a balance in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. The sun meditation that I've been doing, I'm still doing that. I'm definitely doing it more in the moment throughout my life, where I'll find myself with a bit of time just standing somewhere or whatever, and I'll do it then, as opposed to like, I'm gonna lay on my bed and I'm gonna meditate for 10 minutes. Like, I don't really do it like that, or I haven't. Maybe that's my loophole of trying to be lazy around it. I'm watching it, I'm still doing it, it still helps. I'm not sold.
Awesome. Truth be told, I'm practicing.
Yeah. One of the things I'm experimenting with is, and it goes back to the physicality, is I'm building things with my hands. And I say building, and I mean fashion wise. I had mentioned this in the Trust the Journey family. I shared about this in terms of art, and this quote about art being always in service and elevating our soul, which I so believe and experience. So anyway, I had this vision for this wild, giant ass fucking skirt. And so I've been building it like with safety pins and tulle, and it's this big monstrosity. And I plan on, expanding that into a project. But the actual building itself of that type of art project, I could easily avoid that too. So I've been intentional about bringing that into my life, and it helps get my brain away from things, just like we were mentioning earlier in the episode. So yeah, I'll keep you posted.
Wonderful. It brings me to a thought about the kind of the traditional behaviors of human, like the around the campfire or in the hearth, kind of, if you go back a couple hundred years, and we would sit and we would weave, or we would knit, or we would just do these little arts and crafty type things for ourselves that are so meditative and so value and creative, and they really put our mind and our soul at a very peaceful place.
I love it. And I love all of you. Trust the Journey family. I just honestly, guys, thank you for listening to this one. I appreciate the space to share about this. Thank you for all of your insightful questions, Jay, about this experience.
Pleasure.
It's been cool to share about it. So I just appreciate all of you.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah.
We appreciate you, man.
Thank you. So guys, if you got value from
yeah.
the show, I mean, per usual, the way that we end our episodes, seriously share it online or with anyone you think it might help, or via social media, trustthejourney.today.
Awesome. And if you go on iTunes and subscribe, that would be awesome. And reviews, comments, all that stuff, it really makes a big difference in helping us to get a greater audience for the program. And the whole point of having a greater audience is so that more people can find comfort and confidence in sharing the experience of being a human. So really, it's just about sharing and being connected.
Absolutely. And if you want to support more, if you want to be involved in the conversation more, you're welcome to join our Patreon group. That's where the conversation is expanding even beyond the podcast, but really personally in our private group there. So go to the website, trustthejourney.today, scroll down, and there's a button, an orange button that says Patreon.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, guys.
We love you.
We love you.
And remember, keep laughing, keep loving, and keep trusting the journey.
Love it.
Excellent.